To Cheltenham, the best rivalry you've never heard of returns. March the 15th, Paddy Power.
Hello everybody, welcome to a very special edition of Road to Cheltenham. We're taking our eye off this season's horses and casting our mind back to some of the classic races in previous years. It's really intended to whet your appetite for what's coming up in, well, less than 2 weeks now, Ruby.
Yes, less than 2 weeks, but not the way you say we're casting our minds back, because we're going back to an era, Lydia, that my mind had to learn about today.
Yeah, that's the first one, isn't it? Me too. I was 2 at the time that the first race of the 4 that we're going to talk about was. It's the 1977 Champion Hurdle we're going to start with. And it's considered by many people, Ruby, to be the best Champion Hurdle ever.
Yeah, look, Time Form, I think, might back it up. And is that just generational? I don't know. We were talking about a great generation of hurdlers a few weeks ago. We were throwing in Brave Inca and Hardy Useless, et al. And Easterby and whatever. And look, I don't remember this era of champion hurdlers, Night Nurse, Sea Pigeon, Monksfield, etc. But look, they were thrilling races. But I did learn something else today, and we will show it to you, is how different Cheltenham was in the 70s.
Yeah, this was a revelation to me as well. Every day is a learning day, isn't it? We'll tell you what that is in a moment. But just coming back to the Time Form point, so we're really grateful to David Cleary of Time Form, but also to Phil Turner, who's the National Hunt Handicapper and Senior Race Analyst. And he says, it's the vote for our classiest ever renewal of the Champion Hurdle. Monksfield and Sea Pigeon, of course, went on to win the next 4 renewals. Night Nurse, meanwhile, who won the 1977 Champion Hurdle, narrowly failed to become the first to complete the Champion Hurdle Cheltenham Gold Cup double when runner-up to stable companion Little Owl in the 1981 Gold Cup. He says, for what it's worth, Night Nurse ended the season on a Time Form rating of 182, which remains the highest for a hurdler in our history. He was voted National Hunter Horse of the Year for the 1976-77 season ahead of Red Rum, despite the latter having claimed his record-breaking 3rd Grand National win. Monksfield is rated 176 by Time Form and went on to be rated 180 later in his career, which is joint 2nd in the Time Form annals along with Easterby. Bird's Nest was rated 176 in 76-77 season, and Sea Pigeon was 175 and Dramatist 174. So in terms of strength in depth, and obviously the whole point of Time Form is to try and compare seasons, they would say that this was the golden era of champion hurdles.
Well, I'm not going to argue with them. They have the maths to back it up. But look, it's all generational, Lydia. And I still say Cato is better than Arca.
At least there's an argument. You're in the argument.
I don't know. Who knows?
Right, okay. Let's focus on the 1977 Champion Hurdle itself. And as I said, a golden era. These horses fought out the top hurdling prizes over a 6-year period. And we'll start by talking about Night Nurse, who is ridden by Paddy Broderick and trained by Peter Easterby. Peter Easterby called him a big, plain horse, and he also described him as a miserable old bugger in his box.
She could have been all those things, but he was one hell of a good racehorse when you look at him. Paddy Broderick even rode him. And for me in 77, as you will see in a minute, he just outstays the opposition, jumps and gallops on heavy ground and galloped them into the ground, literally. And what was interesting too was the Champion Hurdle at that time was run on the Wednesday. So they didn't race on fresh ground. It was heavy at that time. And for my money, Night Nurse, obviously, who was on to be placed in the Gold Cup, had the most superior stamina. And it's interesting on real heavy ground to see how far out the pacey horse like Sea Pigeon is beaten.
Yes. And interesting. And that change to where the Champion Hurdle was positioned happened in 1980. Is that right?
It did. And that coincided with the Champion Hurdle being moved to the Tuesday. And lo and behold, it coincided with Sea Pigeon winning his first Champion Hurdle at the age of 10. So shorter race, quicker ground, fresher ground. Sea Pigeon eventually gets his head in front.
Yeah, there's another aspect which you've just hinted at about the race that might well have helped Sea Pigeon. Paddy Broderick was well known as a front-running jockey, I have learned, and Peter Easterby has said that he thinks the two of them just clicked. That extra accent on stamina, the way that Paddy Broderick liked to ride, the way that Night Nurse needed to be ridden in order to get the best out of him, the two of them clicked.
Yeah, they look to click anyway, and you'll see that in a minute. But I must say, I did think just exactly where they go in the champion hurdle. You can see where they're starting. They're starting after the first fence. The champion hurdle now starts right back there, that white railing behind where the horses are, and it's just a completely different race. A Nightner, sorry, is down towards the inside of Paddy Broderick. Monksfield in the white sleeves. Sea Pigeon is dropped in towards the back in the red sleeves, and Paddy Broderick straight away jumps into a commanding position on the front end of the field, Lydia.
Yes, and that out the left there, having to be led in and looking reluctant and then keen, that's Flying Diplomat, who's the only one who tries to mix it up front with Night Nurse, who leads in the early stages.
Yeah, and look, Flying Diplomat was 150 to 1 shot in this champion hurdle. But look, when you're watching races, and even as we go through this whole program, with the evolution of cameras, it's much easier nowadays to figure out how fast they're going. HD makes it all so much easier to see. But here, do they look to be going that fast? No. But are they going much slower than they go nowadays? Probably not. Obviously, you've plastic wings on the hurdles back then. They had hurdles as wings, but it's here is where it's so different. They would now be turning left in the champion hurdle, but these horses just keep going straight on, up past the winning post, and are heading to go around the back of what is now the best made enclosure, but what was then called the Tote.
Now, this was a complete revelation to me. The first time I went to Cheltenham was in 1986. I've been watching it for a few years prior to that, but I had no idea that the course layout was so different, that they went round the best mate enclosure at this stage.
Yeah, well, look, I've heard my father tell me about it many times, about the different changes, that there used to be a chute, Lydia, that goes back into where the Guinness Village is now. They used to start in there for some races and come out of there at times as well. But we don't have the footage of 77 to show you, Night Nurse, but we will show you in 78 exactly what track he took. Here he is in front against Monksfield is in second place. But this, to me, and watch the climb as they go through the winning post and turn left, to which is now the entrance to the best mate enclosure, and how high they climb here. I know from walking up and down there with horses that it's quite a steep gradient, but to watch it on television, you can see maybe why Sea Pigeon was never destined to win a champion hurdle on this track, because look at where they're climbing. Look at the pull. They're gone level with the roof nearly on the Tote buildings. It's incredible where they climbed up to, and then they descend eventually into the back straight to join what we now consider to be the racecourse proper.
Yes, so that on the left-hand side there is the 1978 champion hurdle to illustrate what they do. And here on the right is the 1981 champion hurdle, which is won by Sea Pigeon for the second time.
Yeah, and he heads where they all go now. And obviously with the move of days and with the change of track, it looks to be a much sounder surface as well. The grass looks greener anyway. Maybe that's just a different camera with better colour translation or transition or whatever it is. But you can see to the right of the right-hand shot where Night Nurse would have come down. But it's obviously a tighter, faster track, that old course. And it was back in the 80s that it became that track.
Now, I've mentioned my thanks to Phil Turner and to David Cleary. I also must thank Richard Austin for his excellent book At the Festival, which I've been annotating. And I'm grateful to him for a quote from Des McDonough, who trains Monksfield. And this was after the 1980 champion hurdle, so the first time that Sea Pigeon won. And he's referring to the change of track. And he says, well, my jockey on the day, Desi Hughes, said he wasn't as good as he was, and I have to accept what he says. Although 3 months before Cheltenham, I rang Michael Mangan, his owner, and told him that I didn't think he'd be able to win it a third time in a row because they changed the track layout. Sea Pigeon didn't like to go up the hill twice, and that's what I was thinking anyway. So that backs up your thoughts as well, Ruby.
Maybe just coincidence, Lydia, and there's lots of people who were in that generation who could back it up for anybody, between John Joe Neal, Frank Berry, John Frankham, Desi McDonough. A lot of them will be in Cheltenham, and you can ask them all for yourselves. They lived in the time, and they will back it up for you. But look, Desi Hughes is obviously somebody we can't ask anymore, which is a pity. But look, it was just a different time in a different era, and the end of the Night Nurse 77 champion hurdle is what we have coming up, and it's good to watch.
It is. We should just talk about some of the other horses in the race before we go into them, so that we know what we're dealing with. Monksfield was known as he was called all of his life quite a small horse. But again, Des McDonough says that was just because Night Nurse and Sea Pigeon were such great big hulking horses. And the other thing about Monksfield was that he was so Doughty, you'd never get to the bottom of him. Tommy Cannan said, his rider in 1977 said this of him, that he just gives you everything, and when you were riding him, that his head just went lower and lower and his neck just stuck out further and further. And if you want a horse that's of the archetypal, stuck his neck out, put his head down, this is the horse.
Yeah, it is. And he was a great horse to watch, and you'd love a racehorse to race like Monksfield did, with his head down and out and his nose out as far as he can. You also have Dramatist, Bird's Nest. I mean, there's just a cracking bunch of good horses in this race. But it is interesting, even in 77, how jockeys' opinion of where you should go and where the best ground is hasn't changed in all these times. Because you'll see where John Joe O'Neill, as we rode this on Sea Pigeon, elects to come very wide down the hill in Cheltenham, which a lot of jockeys still do for better ground. Now, it was testing ground. Obviously, it was raced on. This was the Wednesday of the Cheltenham Festival. Night Nurse is going to turn at the top of the hill in front. Tommy Cannan is rowing away behind him on Monksfield. Sea Pigeon has gone to the very left under John Joe in the red sleeves. He just about stays in the shot, I think, when it switches here in a second. But, Paddy Broderick, Night Nurse, there goes Sea Pigeon. He's, John Joe doesn't want to be seen out there. But, Night Nurse is still in front, gets tight at the second last. They say back then jumps were massive. That hurdle looked to fall fairly easy to me, but I could be wrong. But Night Nurse, they're all off the bridle, Lydia, bar Monksfield. And he started to come off. Sea Pigeon's going to come off it in a second. It was a test of stamina, wasn't it?
It was, and Beacon Light led at the third last. He was the one that flattened that flight, but Night Nurse is back in front here. And now it's two others that are challenging him, Dramatist and Monksfield.
Yeah, and it gets interesting. Dramatist comes in the middle. Night Nurse has to dig deep. And Monksfield, Tommy Cannan, ruse what's going to happen here at the last hurdle. He always maintained this cost him the race. Maybe it did. He hasn't gone for his whip. Paddy Broderick has. But Night Nurse gets the jump. Monksfield doesn't, lands on all fours, and Night Nurse wins the battle from there on. Did it cost him? Well, Tommy Cannan maintains it did. Maybe it did. But you have to admire Night Nurse's guts.
Yeah, absolutely. And the runner-up, Monksfield. Look at his head out. The two of them are very similar types, aren't they? And they would lock horns again. They're both trying for you completely. Monksfield had been second in the previous year's Triumph Hurdle. Dramatist had won Kempton's Christmas Hurdle and the Kingwell Hurdle. Bird's Nest, probably the best horse never to win the Champion Hurdle. He had I think thumped Night Nurse going into this in the Fighting Fifth, hadn't he? He'd brought to an end Night Nurse's 10 strong unbeaten run.
Yeah, but it's also interesting. Look where they go now, Lydia. The horses, they turn at the top of the chute and they go right. They didn't come back down in front of the stands. These horses then made their way around the back of the grandstand to come into the parade ring from the other end. I mean, Cheltenham was just such a different place then to what we know it as now.
Yeah, totally different. We should mention Sea Pigeon again, because he was quite a combustible talent. You've talked about the way he's had to be ridden later on, the change of the track, but also he was kind of finessed into the race in his later careers, wasn't he, by John Joe O'Neill and also by John Frankham in his final Champion Hurdle success. Yeah,
he was, and I suppose different time. I mean, Sea Pigeon in his life, I know he won a Champion Hurdle at 10 and 11, but he ran 90 odd times. Just the difference in how horses were not programmed, campaigned. Was so different. And yeah, look, when you look at a race and you look what's behind the winner, it's easy to see why Time Form can say this was the Champion Hurdle, because there's just so many winners behind it. Can we ever compare what we have now to what happened then? No, because they're two different tracks.
Yes, absolutely. You're talking about differing campaigns. 17 days later, Night Nurse ran against Monksfield at Aintree over 2 mile, 5.5 furlong, conceding Monksfield £6, and they dead heated in what some argue is Night Nurse's best run ever.
Yeah, it's just incredible, isn't it? How it happened.
And 10 days later, Night Nurse ran again and won again.
At Ayr, I'm assuming, was it?
I don't know where that was, but I think you would assume so from the calendar, wouldn't you? Just an extraordinary.
Or maybe he carried top weight in the Swinton. I'm trying to think what will be coming after
that. Following season, he was below his best, unfortunately. Night Nurse, he fell in the Christmas hurdle because he would stand off his hurdles, and in a fact, that ended Paddy Broderick's riding career, sadly, but he went on to be switched over fences and finished second to Little Owl in the 1981 Cheltenham Gold Cup. So one of those few horses that was able to show top class form over both disciplines.
Yeah, not an easy thing to do. I mean, to run in so many champion hurdles and then transition to be a chaser, there's something admirable about that. And
then Monksfield, of course, as we mentioned, won the next two champion hurdles in his Doughty style. He had Sea Pigeon and Night Nurse behind him the following year, with Sea Pigeon the only one really to put up a threat. And then he beat Sea Pigeon and Beacon Light the following year in 1979, both times, of course, trained by Des McDonough, Tommy Cannan on the first time, and Desi Hughes on board for the second victory. He was also second in 1980 to Sea Pigeon, the first of his two successes, in which Bird's Nest was back in third. And Sea Pigeon was 10 years of age. It's extraordinary that he was, we talked about the reasons possibly why, but extraordinary he was able to come back and win at the age of 10 and the age of 11.
Yeah, it is. And, what's the first thing most people will do next week is put a line through the 10-year-olds.
And it was an exquisite ride from John Frankham in 1981 to win. And of course, Sea Pigeon became one of the great dual purpose legends, winning a couple of Chester Cups as well, and also the Ebor. He and Night Nurse shared a retirement paddock together at Peter Easterby's yard, and they're also buried there under a beech tree, where they're remembered as living legends. So amazing. I
think if any of us had Night Nurse and Sea Pigeon, we would most definitely be burying them wherever we were.
I have learned so much from this particular race, and from watching it back and from reading about it. I'm very grateful to all the things that I've read. It's sort of enriched my understanding of the era. And we're now going to let you, first of all, hear from Peter Easterby, who's talking about his actual concerns going into the 1977 champion hurdle, because it's extraordinary the price that Night Nurse goes off at. I mean, bearing in mind he's the reigning champion, 15-2 he is, 15-2.
I think he opened up 5-2, got a bit on at 3-1, went to 5, a bit more on. I thought, what the hell is happening here? With the touch of sevens, you wouldn't believe it. So I got all the Keith. I said, have you ever left him? Because there's a bit of doping going on then, No, never left him going, out of my sight. Phew, got a little bit more on then. Just starting to sweat now. But before I left home, we had 10 ton of potatoes left. I said, don't sell them, I might need them for cash. So right, the Jubilee won, with a lot of champagne, enjoyed it. I came back home, the potatoes went from 100 to 150. So how was that for a double? Yeah. This is Night Nurse's box. We've got a replacement, probably won't be as good as him, but still, could excuse him for that. So that's where he lived.
So an amazing race, and we can enjoy the closing stages once again with a legendary commentator, Sir Peter O'Sullivan.
Sea Pigeon making good ground towards the outside, and as they jump it, it's Beacon Light now from Night Nurse and Bird's Nest, and then comes Master Monday making good progress, but Night Nurse fighting his way back on the inside now. Paddy Broderick and Night Nurse as they come towards the second last now, and it's Night Nurse on the inside. Over on the far side it's Dramatist with Bird's Nest, and as they level up now for home, it's Night Nurse on the inside from Dramatist, and Monksfield coming there strongly too, and it's Night Nurse from Monksfield and Dramatist. Bird's Nest over on the far side, Night Nurse and Dramatist together, and Monksfield and Sea Pigeon on the near side, and it was Night Nurse there from Monksfield and Dramatist as they race into the closing stages. It's Night Nurse from Monksfield, these two now, Night Nurse for England and Monksfield for Ireland as they race up to the line, and Night Nurse is going to win it again. Night Nurse wins the champion hurdle from Monksfield in second, Dramatist is third, and Sea Pigeon 4. 5 is Bird's Nest, and 6 Beacon Light, and 7 is Master Monday, 8 Flying Diplomat, and 9 and last is Winter Melody.
Right, now for something of a tearjerker, I think. If that one got you thinking, the 1977 champion hurdle. I think the 1998 Queen Mother Champion Chase will get you sniffling. It's the victory of one man, Ruby, and this was the horse that was going to win a Gold Cup.
Yeah, had a couple of goals, Lydia, and it didn't work out. Look, obviously he was brilliant in a couple of King Georges, and it's amazing to think that we won the Champion Chase. It was his 20th race victory, but his first at Grade 1 level at 2 miles. Nicky Richards trained him. Obviously, he'd been long associated with Richard Dunwoody. Tony Dobbin had gotten back on him to win the Ascot Chase. Tony was suspended or injured, I think. Injured, yeah. And yeah, Brian Harding got the ride, and what a big ride. You have Richard Dunwoody and Claire and Davis, Adrian Maguire on Viking Flagship, AP on O'Reilly, you had Russ Garrity and Ask Tom. A cracking lineup, cracking race, but what a day for Brian Harding, and one man was spectacular.
The jockey story is one that ran parallel, as you mentioned. In his early days, Neil Doughty rode one man, and then Tony Dobbin had him, but he rode him during the 94-95 season, and then he lost the ride after breaking his hand, and Richard Dunwoody got it, and Tony Dobbin never got on again until this season, the race immediately preceding the Champion Chase. He rode him beating Strong Promise at Ascot, and then coming into Cheltenham, he broke his thumb in the Arkle the previous day and wasn't able to ride in the Champion Chase.
Absolute sickener. I'd say knowing Tony Dobbin, he could probably laugh about it now, the character he is. But look, it was a great race, and it was one man's pace and jumping that was spectacular here. And again, the HD or the camera work, looking back on things, it's hard to know just how fast they're going. But what becomes apparent very early is how far back the two outsiders get, and that just tells you how quick they're going. One man does land in front, left ear shot in the blue with the pink. Ask Tom, Russ Garrity's going to send him forward. Huge horse with a huge stride, and from the second to the third, these two open up. Karen Davis in the middle in the noseband. Everyone knows Viking Flagship. O'Reilly's in behind the grey, and Dorset.
Lord Dorset down the inside, but the other two are outsiders, and they get dropped here in a second, and they just, even looking at that day, you think, are they going as fast as they are these days? Damn right they're going as fast, because the camera zooms in here, you can see how quick they're going. But it's one man's jumping, and the pace he had for a horse that could win a King George. He's hard on the bridle here with Brian Harding, flies the second, but they're going to pull away now from Viking Flagship. Claire on Davis, Lord Dorset's flat to the boards down the inside. The 200 to 1 shots get dropped here on the bend, and this is just pace, pure pace. Look at the spread on them now, and this only gets more open from here on. Ask Tom went into this as the favourite. He was second to Martha's Son in the previous year's Queen Mother Champion Chase. Just nudged along there, actually, one man, isn't he, as Ask Tom goes past?
Just to hold his position. Brian Harding wasn't going to let Russ Garrity in across in front of him. One man does go to a little bit to his right, so you wanted Russ outside him, but they're going to stride down the back here now. First down the back, Claren Davis gets a little bit close. O'Reilly makes a mistake, but he's nearly flat to the boards. But they are rocking along, and Russ and Brian Harding just go hammer and tongs here, and it's fabulous to watch. Brilliant jumping. I mean, from stepping up in trip, you wouldn't think one man was the one stepping up in trip. Look at him now. He's just in control here.
Yes, initially Ask Tom was kind of out jumping one man. He's got parity back here, and he will start to out jump Ask Tom, and all the others just start to struggle. I mean, we're talking about probably horses on the downgrade. The mighty Viking Flagship in the 1998 wasn't the brilliant horse he once was, and even Claren Davis was probably not as good as he was.
Probably not, but O'Reilly was the previous year's Arkle winner, and he's struggling to hold the posse. They go to the last ditch here. One man jumps it well, and Russ Garrity, but his first response back then, there was no number. Give him a slap there and get him back up in the game, get him back on the bridle. And that's how far out they're going at it. And down the hill here now, it's remarkable to watch one man, but he goes right in front of Ask Tom at 3 out, and then at 2 out, well, he does it again and basically ends whatever chance Ask Tom is going to have. I mean, AP is flat to the boards back there, and O'Reilly. Lord Dorset there's nothing else on it, only one man. Like, that's pure pace. I mean, a bit of stamina as well, but what class. Ears pricked, out to his right, Ask Tom, but Brian Harding goes straight back in, doesn't give Russ Garrity the option to switch inside him, and he goes violently across in front of him here.
And the interesting thing, of course, is the crowd, everybody had seen one man empty up the hill in 2 Cheltenham Gold Cups before, also in the RSA chase before. And the question was, did he just hate Cheltenham? Would he get up the hill?
I'd say when you read back through form as well, Lydia, like he broke blood vessels at time, and he had burst in the King George that season when he finished 5th, and maybe when he got on a stiff finish like Cheltenham, maybe that's what happened, and people thought, oh, he doesn't like the Cheltenham Hill. But actually, when you look at him here, I wonder, in this modern age, if you watch the last 100 yards as he starts to slow again, his tongue is hanging out. I wonder, was that always an issue for him? But like, he was spectacular this day, and unfortunately, that was the last day we saw him winning.
Yes, it was. Sadly, he would go on to Aintree after this marvellous day for Brian Harding, and there's no worse illustration of the highs that racing can be, and then immediately afterwards the rock bottom, because he ended up taking a fatal fall, didn't he, at Aintree, very next time out.
Yeah, he did, and that's I suppose, the downside to National Hunt Racing. But unfortunately, it was no one's intention, or there's very little we can do about it. I'm sure the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen Mother, enjoyed it, and and when you watch this and you're looking at 2022, you just wonder, in time, could Shishkin emulate one man the other way around, and maybe be the horse that goes champion chase, maybe like Edgerton Blow, and wins a King George as well. Interesting.
We'll come back to what we might have learned, if anything, from this race on this season's race. I just wanted to point out before we go to it that Graham Good's commentary, you can hear him in the race asking the question about whether the horse is going to come up the hill. And there's an electric moment from the crowd as well as he turns for home, and they're kind of, are we actually going to see this? One man being crowned at last. It's an extraordinary story in many different ways. And it's interesting that at the age of 10, this was the year that he was reinvented as a 2-miler, because he hadn't run over 2 miles since his novice hurdling debut. And then they're just starting to learn. Gordon Richards is quoted in the early part of the season saying, I just don't think he's a stayer at this level. It's interesting when a horse who's so well known as one thing then reveals himself to be something else.
It is, but that's the dream. And it's like, nobody, in the best possible way of putting this, sets out to buy a champion chase horse or a stayers hurdle horse. Actually, do they set out to be a champion hurdle horse? No, everyone's dream, young horses, whatever, is to buy a Gold Cup horse. And then everything's we try to turn them all into Gold Cup horses. But maybe sometimes they just aren't that. And there are other championship races which can be won. And look, that's ultimately where one man ended up. But to me, the thing to take out of it is another 10-year-old. How many 10-year-olds are you going to write off?
Yes, do bear that in mind. And as you say, it was a great day for Brian Harding, riding in public for the first time. He and Tony Dobbin, both stable jockeys to Gordon Richards, had ridden the horse at home, but career had been paused in 1997. He missed 12 months due to a head injury, so this was a real day of celebration for everybody. And in a moment, we're going to enjoy the race again. What have we learned, if anything, from this race that could apply to this year's champion chase, Ruby?
I think pretty much the same as we learned about 90% of champion chases. I think last year's was an exception with a steadily run race, but they are usually end-to-end races. And whatever way you look at it, stayers win champion chases. And Shishkin, I think, is the strongest stayer in this year's champion chase. And the other thing to take from those last 2 races we've watched, they were the mighty years of the north of England, Lydia.
They absolutely they were. Let's enjoy it again.
3 more fences to jump, and the leading 5 in the Queen Mother chase are one man. What a good jump. Asked Tom, Clare and Davis, an unusual mistake there, and it's one man. Then look at this, hard held. to the jump. One man, the grey, the giant grey. Ask Tom in second, Lord Dorset in third. And so the Northern jockeys 1, 2 and 3 as they take the second from home, with All Royal back in 4. Clare and Davis a most disappointing 5. Viking Flagship, who's been high on the barometer of braveness, well beaten as they make the final turn. And it's one man now. He's facing this Cheltenham hill, and Lord Dorset is the challenger in second. 2 in third place, All Royal at the final fence now, and one man comes to it. Over safely, 2 miles. His trip is taking them a long time to find it out, but the Queen Mother Champion Chase goes to one man, Brian Harding's biggest day, and it's going to be a triumph for Gordon Richards. One man taking his 20th race, the Queen Mother Champion Chase, and one man wins at Cheltenham, deservedly, to All Royal second, Lord Dorset third, Viking Flagship just beaten for 4th place.
So from the Champion Chase to the Stayers Hurdle, and this is the 2003 Stayers Hurdle, where Baracouda, the great French hurdler and the best hurdler in training, full stop, champion hurdlers and staying hurdlers the previous season, the best hurdler, he was looking to win a second Stayers Hurdle, but the clash that everybody had been wanting was with Limestone Lad. Ruby, they'd been denied it in 2002 because Limestone Lad had a setback just before Cheltenham, missed the race. Here, at the age of 11, Limestone Lad finally was to clash with Baracouda.
Yeah, he was. And look, I actually rode Limestone Lad once. I won a handicap hurdle on him by a short head, I think. I'd say not one of my proudest moments to say I can only win a short head on Limestone Lad, but he was an incredible horse who could just gallop horses into the ground in Ireland. And I think as you play this Stayers Hurdle in a minute, I think Barry Geraghty's awareness of what Limestone Lad was capable of doing is a massive help to Thierry Dumas.
Yes, now Barry Geraghty was on board Iris's Gift, who was running here as a novice hurdler and would announce himself or prove himself to be a huge talent in this race. Going into it, it was seen to be a duel between Ireland's best hurdler, Limestone Lad, against Baracouda. And one of the elements of this is the setup is how different they are, isn't it? You know, in the Limestone Lad goes from the front really grittily, whereas Baracouda is almost awkward and is ridden really, really cold and, you know, idles. And the clash between the two is what adds another layer to the race.
It does, because, you know, one is going to be at one end of the field, and he became, as he got older, a much better jumper, Limestone Lad. Whereas Baracouda, he liked to warm up. You know, he was lazy and a little bit maybe lethargic, and he took a bit of riding. And I don't look, because most people judge jockeys from the back of the last to the winning post, I'm not sure Thierry Dumas ever got the credit he deserved for riding this horse. He was French in the latter part of a race, but he rode this horse brilliantly for the majority of the race, which is the hardest part to ride. Now, like Irish Gift, the grey horse in the middle, he makes a mistake in the second, but he was only a novice on this particular occasion. But straight away you can see Paul Carberry in front of Limestone Lad, and Irish's Gift, Barry Geraghty is not going to let Limestone Lad get a freebie on him, whereas Baracouda, he's towards the back of the shot and almost looks, as they go away from the third hurdle, like he's going as fast as he can. And when he jumps the fourth hurdle, you will see Thierry Dumas just give him a little nudge, because he's pretty much going as quick as he can. Now Dino's Bino's in second. We know he was a prolific front runner. He can't get any closer, but as Barry Geraghty moves up, he pushes Dino's Bino forward, which keeps them both in contact with Limestone Lad. He flies the fourth hurdle, Limestone Lad. Watch Baracouda on landing. Thierry sits down and gives him a hunt. He's going as fast as he can. This was an out-and-out Stayers Hurdle. They went flat out from start to finish. I can vaguely remember riding a horse called Brother Joe. I never got involved, but I do remember we were going pretty hard all the way.
Yes, and to give you an idea of the quality of the race, it was considered a better race than the Champion Hurdle that year. It was a deep field. You've already mentioned Dino's Bino, who had beaten Baracouda, brought to an end his winning streak in the long walk hurdle when he was going to try and win a third long walk hurdle. Galileo, the previous year's Royal and Sun Alliance hurdle winner, he was making his seasonal debut in it. Classified under Tony McCoy, he was stepping up in trip and expected to improve for it. So it was a competitive field alongside the big two.
Yeah, it was a very deep field, and Liz Aquarig at the back in the white cap, Charlie Swan riding John Kiley's really good mare as well. But again, it's how close Limestone Lad got huge leads in Ireland, being able to go at the pace he's going But Barry Geraghty would have ridden in those races, and he was always going to be aware that this horse doesn't stop, and he's managed to get Iris's Gift onto Limestone Lad's tail, which has dragged Dino's Beano there and probably kept the whole field, classified included, closer to Limestone Lad than they usually would have been in Ireland. But when they land here again, watch Thierry Duman and Baracouda. He's going pretty much, he's nudging him with his hands. He doesn't want to really ask him, but he's nudging him just to keep going the speed he's going, because he too doesn't want to get any further back than he already is, which is plenty far off Limestone Lad.
Now let's talk about Thierry Duman, because he got plenty of flack, didn't he, for his riding of Baracouda. That was when the horse was establishing a winning sequence of 10. And then there was a fright behind Mr. Cool at Ascot, where he won narrowly by a neck. And then he was beaten by Dino's Beano, where Tony McCoy, who'd ridden Mr. Cool at Ascot, then went on to be able to beat him in the Longwood Hurdle on board Dino's Beano, riding a really canny race. What did you make of criticism of Thierry Duman?
Look, every style is a different thing, and a lot of French jockeys, and I was lucky enough to ride in France quite a bit with Christophe Pugh, Jacques Racou, Thierry Duman, David Cotton. They ride very different races, and they ride extremely different off the bridle to how we do. They're probably not as strong as English riders, but tactically they're very different, and they're tactically very good jockeys. And if you watch Thierry here on Baracouda, he's trying to nudge him closer, but watch him, if this camera does go to overhead down the hill, how tactically he puts Baracouda into the right places. He's going to join classified now in a minute. Barry Geraghty's still sitting on Paul Carberry's tail, but Thierry, even though he's been off the bridle and he's riding a strong stare, he's aware this horse doesn't do a whole lot in front, and he rides him into a pocket down the hill. That's confidence and tactics. And look, he's looking behind him there to see if see or Charlie Swannies and Liz Aquari, because he knows he was the only one that was behind him that could be going well. And now Thierry's sitting up again. Even though his hands are moving, his arse is up out of the saddle, he's happy in his position. So races, judging jockeys, you've got to judge how they ride the whole race, not just from the back of the last home. And I think tactically Thierry did an awful lot right in this horse.
I totally agree. I mean, there's quite a bit of ignorance, maybe a bit of xenophobia, and a bit of lack of understanding of what he was doing. Right there,
watch him here into the pocket. He knows Barry Geraghty's not going to let him between Limestone Lad and Iris's Gift, but he doesn't want to commit either. Rides him into the pocket, pings the second last, and he stays sitting in there. He's not going to commit him. He knows where the winning post is, and that's not something every jockey can do. We see lots of jockeys go too soon. We will see plenty pull out and go there in a fortnight's time. So, it's to make that manoeuvre and sit in is not that easy. Barry Geraghty has to look to see where Thierry is as he's coming on his outside. But still, Thierry gets up sides, but he doesn't send this horse away from the other two. He rides him all the way down to the last, just a neck in front of Iris's Gift, and he knows how to win the race.
3 of them up there at the last, and what was billed as a 2-horse race turned out to be a 3-horse race in the end, with Iris's Gift announcing himself as a talent. But Baracouda, there he is idling again, but still just doing enough, pulling out enough to repel a really good novice. Yeah,
top class novice in Iris's Gift, who was a really, really good horse. But Baracouda was a tremendous stayer. That was his second World Hurdle, and a big thrill for that man and his dad who trained him.
Yeah, Francois Dumas, of course, who trained him. Just the 3rd horse to win a second Stayers Hurdle, following Crimson Embers and Galmoy. Obviously, subsequently, we saw Ingles Driver win it 3 times, and of course, Big Bucks win it 4 times. 3 days after this, I didn't realise this, I'd forgotten. Funny how you forget things. Francois Dumas announced that Baracouda was going to be running over fences the following season. Now, that never came to pass. They obviously had a change in plan, but he was immediately installed as favourite for the Royal and Sudden Lions Chase 3 days later.
I forgot that too, and we never got to see that. Did he come back in the following year's Stayers Hurdle?
He won the long distance hurdle, beat Dino's Beano at Newbury. He then won his 3rd long walk, beating Mr. Cool, and then won a handicap hurdle. Different campaigns then at Sandown, and then he faced Iris's Gift again here at Cheltenham, and Iris's Gift beat him. And I just remember, I've got a very strong memory of the post race of the 2004 Stayers Hurdle, when he's beaten into second, and Francois Dumas, who so evidently loved this horse, is sort of tweaking Baracouda's tail as if to say it isn't so bad in defeat. I still think you're the best staying hurdler. It was a really deep race, this, and that turned out to be Limestone Lad's final race. Again, memory plays tricks. I'd forgotten that as well. He missed Punches Down, and then we never saw him again.
He did, and that was 2002. He had run 2003, 2002. He had run him one before. Shane McGovern run him, didn't he? Which is probably 2000, because 2001 was foot and mouth. But look, he was an incredible horse. But I think when you look at that one, Lydia, and you think about 2022, I think we could have similar pace. I think when you watch what could happen at the start with two hot horses like Classical Dream and Flooring Porter won't want to get in behind Classical Dream like he did at Leopardstown. So I think you could have similar early speed in this year's Stayers Hurdle. And that start's going to be interesting. We saw Iris's Gift there in that race stand for a second, just a split second before he went. You'll have Paisley Park, who's getting a bit of a reputation at the start. You'll have Flooring Porter, who'll want to charge. You'll have Classical Dream, who'll be wanting to charge.
Indefatigable, who has a think sometimes at the start as well.
She does too, yeah. So the start of the Stayers Hurdle, wouldn't mind the price in the fall start in that one.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Right, okay, well, let us enjoy, shall we, once again, the 2003 Stayers Hurdle.
Still Limestone Lad from Iris's Gift. Baracouda moving menacingly into third place. Classified is 4. They seem to have it between them at the moment as they head down towards the second last. Limestone Lad will jump this about a half length ahead of Iris's Gift. Baracouda's on their tail and he's cantering the French horse. In fourth place is Classified. They're a long way clear of the others. They're headed by Lissa Buerek. They turn for home then. Limestone Lad, can he beat them off? Iris's Gift travelling well. Thierry Dumen now gets to work on Baracouda, who's taking a challenge on the outside. And here we go down towards the final fight. It's the clash we've all been waiting for. Limestone Lad for Ireland, Baracouda for France. Baracouda strikes the front pretty early. Iris's Gift between horses. Here's the final fight. Baracouda, Iris's Gift. Limestone Lad back in third. It's Baracouda who leads again up the Cheltenham Hill. Iris's Gift trying to get back to the French horse in second place. He can idle in front. Baracouda and Iris's Gift. There's a half length between the pair. Baracouda is going to hold on to his Stayers Championship. Baracouda wins again. From Iris's Gift in second. Limestone Lad back in third.
So that was Baracouda. And now we move on to the Cheltenham Gold Cup. And we've actually already given a sneak preview of which Cheltenham Gold Cup we've chosen, haven't we, Ruby, earlier on in this series?
We did. When a certain horse was retired, we promised that we would go back and look at him, I suppose, and look at his best performance, which was undoubtedly his Gold Cup win in 2018.
And that horse is, of course, Native River. And this was an extraordinary race. He was up against Might Bite. And basically, this Cheltenham Gold Cup was a duel. And it was a duel from start to finish. And I remember finding it the most pulsating, riveting race. I mean, you can never tear your eyes away from any Cheltenham race, but this was incredible because you're thinking different things about each of the horses all the way around. And the question that Richard Johnson and Native River are asking of Might Bite and Nico de Voinville is the ultimate question of Might Bite, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. And it was a Gold Cup I watched. I'd broken my leg a couple of days earlier, but I was in Cheltenham to watch it. And I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The atmosphere, the noise, the lulls and the swings of it, and the oohs and the ahs. I'm sure it was a magic race for Richard Johnson to ride in. But if you happened to be in Cheltenham that day, it was a magic race to witness.
Let's set them up in terms of what they were. So they were both high-class novice chasers, weren't they? And Might Bite would have been a very impressive winner of the Corto Star in his novice season, the preceding season. He then went to Cheltenham when the RSA, in an extraordinary fashion, he basically looked as though he fancied a quick one in the Guinness Village when he had the race all wrapped up in the run-in, popped in, decided actually probably ought to finish the race, whisper-headed in, and he got back up. It was extraordinary. It
was extraordinary and definitely showed the kink maybe that was in Might Bite. An extremely talented horse with a quirk, but lots of good ones do. And Native River had gotten touched off in the National Hunt Chase, hadn't he?
Yeah, he had by Minella and Rocco. Interesting path, wasn't it, for the Gold Cup winner? A path that we see more regularly. I mean, in the old days, the National Hunt Chase wasn't a good enough race to allow that kind of stepping stone for a learning novice.
No, it wasn't. And look, there was a few more in here. Obviously, you had our Duke, who'd looked an exceptional novice in Ireland when he won the Irish National with a big weight. Jack Adam was back again, definitely red. Plenty of the older liables. American actually ran a big race for a long way. But look, it ended up, they will set off in a second, pretty much first and second. And nothing else ever really looks like getting involved.
No, Mike Biter come out and won the King George, and we knew that Kempton really suited him. Native River had been campaigned differently this season. In the previous year, he'd been third to Sizing John in the Gold Cup after a fantastic campaign, winning the Hennessy, the Welsh National, and the Denman Chase before finishing third in the Gold Cup. Collins says, I'd put him away until the Denman Chase, which he won, and so he lined up here a much fresher horse.
Yeah, he did, and he bounced out the gate straight away. Mike Bike goes with him, our Duke, Safford the rear. Down the inside is definitely red, Americans wide, and then green and blue. Kilolta Vic, Road to Riches, Jack and Am, Annabelle Fly, Total Recall. Backison is going to unseat Danny Mullins at the second. I can't remember what the second Jigginstown horse is.
Road to Respect?
Oh, no, he's on the inside.
Outlander,
yeah. Ed Wolf and T for two, Lizzie Kelly. But look, Backison went early, but look, the two horses in front, they go, Native River drags them, and for the second second they go toe to toe. But it is interesting, Lydia, to watch how many horses struggle from so early in this race. It was relentless.
It was, and that's the key weapon that Native River had. When he gets into this kind of rhythm, he grinds and he's metronomic, and his jumping is just fantastic, and it just stretches everybody behind. It's asking a question at every fence.
Yeah, it is. Look, and he shortens up, and also he was able to go quick enough over the first two fences and up around the bend that he was uncontested in front to get in a rhythm down over fences 3. The water is coming now as 4, and before they get to the ditch. So he was able to get into a rhythm and then start to build and grind it. Now Annabelle Fly in the blue cap, he runs on eventually to finish third. He gets a smashing ride, but you can see Danny Cook tapping definitely red on the shoulder already. This is the 5th fence. Definitely Red's not that slow a horse. That to me proves the pace that they're going here. Road to Riches is really, Road to Respect even, is travelling really well, but he had the pace to win over 2.5 miles.
Do you think people expected Nico de Boinville to ride Mike Bite like this?
I think they did. I think Nico did what Nico does best, and that's keep things incredibly simple. And when this race is over, where should you have been in the race? Well, that was right behind Native River, because ultimately he wins it. So the horse in front hasn't gone too fast, and he had the pace to sit on his tail. Our Duke is in sort of fortish. Jack Adam, who at times could take a grip, never stiffen the rein with Patrick Mullins. So like they've gone a really good gallop, but even up here, Richard has winged those fences, and he turns to the 4th last on the first occasion. They've opened a gap, but they're at the 2 in front then sit from here all the way to the 2nd last fence, as the others don't get a breather, but they have to, because they have to close up.
Another factor, of course, was the rain. The rain had come, hadn't it? And I remember asking Nico de Boinville, to pick up on what you just said there, after the race, and he was very kind to answer this question immediately after the Gold Cup was ridden, and he'd given the debrief to Connections, and he was walking back to the weighing room having finished 2nd. I said, could you have done anything differently? He was inclined to say that he thinks that the rain had changed things, that had rolled things against, and he was just beaten by a very good horse who was more suited to the conditions. He didn't think he could do anything differently, although obviously he'd have gone back and watched it several times afterwards to see whether he still thought that. Yeah,
but to me, you usually when you watch back a replay, you look for where the winner was, and ultimately if he's won the race, he's most likely to have been in the right position. And Native River made the run in here. So for me, Nico was in the right position. He's right behind who ultimately wins the race. But it's their jumping, the two of them, and it just develops into a match. It's already developed into a match. So many are struggling to hold the positions they're in. And even though some do get a little bit closer into the back straight, these two in front just start up in the ante, and it's jump after jump from here on. And Richard Johnson's going to ask him big questions.
And of course, as is traditional, there is fresher ground as well for the Gold Cup, isn't it? And they're in the A position there. It's his jumping. They're jumping an ability that put them in pole position, and they're just making sure that no horse is able to get into the race, including Jack Adam, who makes a whopper of a mistake there.
Yeah, and our Duke is now flat to the boards. Definitely Red is doing well to hang in there. Noel Feely's pushing forward an American. Safford Array, who jumped out handy, he's going to struggle. Annabelle Fly and Road to Respect are the only two back in the pack that are still on the bridle. And the Road to Respect now is starting to get a squeeze. But Barry Geraghty is not even trying to get involved in this race. He's riding to beat the ones that are immediately in front of him. He looks like he's discounted the two up the front. And, Richard and Nico just keep pouring it on here. And it's, I suppose, what a Gold Cup is to me. They just keep dropping off. Nothing's going to quicken or go any faster. Horses just keep dropping out the back. And all the way here, Mike Bite looks to have Native River's measure. He's going that little bit easier. And Dickie Ashford, big jump here at the last ditch, which Native River gets, spots a stride and flies it. And, he's good at the fifth last, but you watch the one Richard goes for at 4 out off the bend. And it's a ride that was all duck and no dinner. It was like pop stop and watch him go to the next fence. If Native River doesn't answer this question, it's going to end in tears. But look, the horse was committed, but the man on his back was equally as committed.
Again, I mean, it was a bit like what we were saying about the Stayers Hurdle, the different styles of the two horses, and also a bit like, as we were saying about Night Nurse and Paddy Broderick, Richard Johnson and Native River were made for each other, and here he's having to ask and ask and ask, and what he's trying to do is to draw out that finishing speed, the superior travelling, the pacier horse might bite for the end, the stamina of the finish.
He is, but if you watch them all the way down, and even here Lydia has total recall the parts. Richard is slapping him down the shoulder and moving with his hands, but from his knee to his hip is key. He hasn't gotten into the saddle, so he's getting this horse to 97, 98%, but he hasn't gone for all. Now he's getting down onto him to get him to 100%. So even though he's up in the ante from a long way out, he's only now getting to 100% on this horse. And Nico has come on his outside and might bite. Second last again, both jumping well, and it's the last. Both riders spot really good strides. But here you're thinking, might bite, he's going to go by him. He's surely going to go by him. But Dickie spots one at the last. Native River, he answers, lands running, head down. And I can remember standing in the stand thinking, it's all over.
It was. Mike Bite went out to his right. You can see he's just running on fumes in the closing stages. The trip, the final climb, the rain, and just the brilliance on this day of Richard Johnson and Native River. And afterwards, Richard Johnson was very, very emotional. It had been a very, very long time, 18 years since his previous Gold Cup success on Looks Like Trouble. And it was obvious in his post-race interview that he knew how difficult it was to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup. I mean, the previous 18 years had proved that to him.
Yeah, but even like for somebody that was as prolific a rider as Richard Johnson, there hadn't been maybe as many championship successes as Cheltenham as he would have hoped for. And it is the realisation that how hard they are to ride these horses. And, there wouldn't have been, there's no doubt, there wasn't a more popular winner within the wearing than Richard Johnson. He was a role model, he was a brilliant rider. You look at people and you think someone deserves something. Well, yeah, he definitely deserved that.
And there he is raising his hand, his second Gold Cup success, and just an amazing day. And you can see how chewed up the ground is behind. And there is, he'll go and talk to the press afterwards, and it's just, he's soaking in the atmosphere at this point. And of course, in contrast, as we were saying at the start of the show with the Champion Hurdle, from more recent times, you go back in front of the crowd, and this is the race that the whole of the meeting builds up to, and the whole of, you were saying earlier in the show, every horse's career, this is the pinnacle of.
It is, and that's, look, it's the dream. I mean, it is the pinnacle of the sport, and that's what horses are bred to be, and national racing is all about. And It is, and even whatever race you win in Cheltenham, there is something a bit different about the reception a Gold Cup winner gets. It is the biggest crowd of the week, and it's just a special occasion, and that was a pulsating race to watch.
It really was. Mike White came out and won at Aintree next time out, but then he was never the same again, really, was he? He'd been taken places, I think, by Native River that day that he hadn't experienced before.
No, and never quite got over them either. But, maybe when you look at it in hindsight, what's a great horse is a sound horse. And sound has to be sound of mind as well as body. And Might Bite was a very good horse who had probably always showed us maybe mentally he was never going to be a great horse.
He was a brilliant, but I think it's fair to say that he was quirky. Native River ran several times. He had more of a busy campaign the following season. He didn't win in 3 starts, including a 4th behind Album Photo in the Gold Cup, but he ran consistently very well. Following season, they tried blinkers with him. He won a couple of times, and then this season, the curtain was brought down on his career when he pulled up at the Welsh Grand National, and Garth and Anne Broom, who are the owners, and they race under the name Baracouda Racing. Garth was saying that the horse just simply wasn't enjoying himself. And of course they cherished the horse so much that they thought it was best to have an honourable retirement, and that is exactly what he was. And he has punched a bit of a hole, certainly in the British jump season, because we're so used to having Native River. Native River was in all of these races season after season after season, fighting and doing the thing that he did best. And
very dependable. And I'm sure there are plenty of people with a horse in this year's Gold Cup who would love to have Native River in there. With Native River, you were guaranteed pace, you were guaranteed a front runner, and you was guaranteed a race that was going to require stamina. But unfortunately, he's not there. And I do admire the decision to retire him before he fell too far down the ladder. And I think that is admirable. And but I do think he punches a hole in the tactics of this year's Gold Cup.
Yes. Now, he didn't quite have the pace to get to the front in last season's Gold Cup, did he? That was the sign, really, that he was getting a little bit older, and his very best days, his brilliant best days, were behind him. So where is the pace going to come from this time around? What do we learn from that Gold Cup that we can apply to this season's Gold Cup?
It's not going to be the same pace. And, what can we apply to it? I don't know. There are a couple of horses that will want to test the stamina, being Galvin, Album Photo, and even Manila Indo. They are strong stayers. They will want to test the stamina. None of them are front runners. And the only horse who's in the race that has possibly even made a run in the past is Santini. But I doubt, I don't think he's even quite fast enough now to make the run. And even if he does look a horse that is definitely in a better place than he has been in the past. But I do think that's going to be a fascinating race, tactically wise. There are stayers in there, but how they're going to make it a stamina race on horses that don't front run, well, someone's going to have to change tack.
Someone is going to have to find a way, aren't they? And later on in this series, well, nearer the time, we were going to be discussing and trying to work out who that might be. But in the meantime, let us enjoy once more the duel between Might Bite and the mighty Native River in the 2018 Cheltenham Gold Cup.
Still Native River with the noseband, but still Might Bite is there behind him. He's only a half length behind. Total Recall fell at the third last. Cheltenham made an error. Annabelle Fly and Road to Respect are staying on. This is the home turn in the Gold Cup. Might Bite on the outside of a drivel along Native River. 5 or 6 lengths at least behind those to Road to Respect. Then Annabelle Fly and Cheltenham behind those. 2 fences to jump. Nico still holding on to Might Bite. Native River with a noseband on the right. The pair are still together. Second last, they touch down when they head towards the final fence. Might Bite nearest to us. Under pressure, the far side is the brave Native River. The 22nd and final fence. Native River just in front, the Might Bite. Up the hill they come. Native River by a length and a half to Might Bite in second place. Native River is fending off the challenger Might Bite. They run towards the line. The brave, the generous Native River in front. He's still holding on. He's made every yard. What a run. Native River and Richard Johnson have won the Tamiko Gold Cup. Might Bite in second, Annabelle Fly in third.
So that's the end of our nostalgia show. My thanks again to Phil Turner, to David Cleary, to Richard Austin, to you, Ruby. We've got some housekeeping for you. Ask the Handicapper will be on the Racing TV website and also on the Road to Cheltenham YouTube. That's your chance to hear from the British Horse Racing Authority's official handicappers. Some questions have been fired at them about the weights that they've given the significant races for the Cheltenham Festival, and they will be talking about that, and you can find that on our YouTube channel and on the website. Also on the website will be 2 columns in the next 7 days, and there will be much more than that besides, building towards our big preview show on the Monday immediately before the Cheltenham Festival, the eve of the festival. But I'll be seeing you rather sooner than that, won't I, Ruby?
Monday evening, Lydia. I do believe we're set to do a Cheltenham preview together for Paddy Power.
Cheltenham Festival preview, absolutely. So make sure you keep an eye out for that and all the other things relating to Road to Cheltenham. I hope you've enjoyed this walk down memory lane. Bye-bye. We'll see you soon.
This Cheltenham, the best rivalry you've never heard of returns. March the 15th, Paddy Power.